If you think the main reason people, quit their jobs to start a business is just to get obscenely rich, well, the psychological data suggest you're actually fundamentally wrong.
Completely wrong.
You're right. I mean, when researchers actually sit down with hundreds of founders to figure out what pushed them into the unknown, acquiring massive wealth and social status, it consistently ranks at the bottom of the list.
Which is wild to think about.
It is, because the real driver is something far more uncomfortable. I mean, we've all had that moment, right? You're sitting at your desk on a Tuesday afternoon, staring at a spreadsheet, and suddenly the thought hits you, I should just walk out of here and build something myself.
Oh, yeah. The classic Tuesday afternoon crisis.
Exactly. So what actually separates the people who just let that thought pass from the people who, pack up their desk and actually do it? That's our mission for this deep dive today. We are exploring the psychological why behind entrepreneurship.
And just to be clear, for you listening right now, we are entirely bypassing the usual talk about, business plans or venture capital or market optimization.
Yeah, none of that today.
Right. We are going straight into the human operating system. We want to unpack what drives human behavior at its absolute core so you can sort of reflect on your own personal hierarchy of needs.
Which requires looking through an entirely different lens, I think. We're stepping away from this view of the entrepreneur as just this purely financial entity trying to maximize profit.
Yeah, they're human beings with dignity and values and dreams. And the foundation for our analysis today is this really compelling academic paper. It's titled A Study on Entrepreneurial Motivation.
Authored by Dr. Pramod Pandey, right?
Yes, from Presidency University in Bangalore. He presented this research at a Young Researchers Conference, and the core premise of it just completely reframes the narrative.
It really does.
He argues that the drive to start a business is rooted in the most basic human psychology. Specifically, it's this overwhelming need to relieve mental tension.
Mental tension. I love that. The idea that starting a company isn't about, seeking a shiny reward, but rather escaping a specific type of psychological pain. It kind of changes everything.
It shifts the entire paradigm.
But to really grasp what Dr. Pandey is arguing here, we have to start at the absolute foundation. Before we can even analyze why someone builds a startup, we really need to understand why human beings do anything at all.
Right, the actual mechanics of action. I mean, even the linguistic root of the word tells a story here. Motivation derives from the Latin word movere, which just simply translates to move.
To move, huh?
Yeah. It suggests that action isn't this passive state. It's a physical and psychological shift. And the text introduces Dalton E. McFarland's theory of motivation, which, it basically posits that motivation is essentially a state of internal strain.
Internal strain. So an unmet need isn't just a neutral thing.
Exactly. When you have an unmet need, it doesn't just sit there as an inactive data point in your brain. It generates active, really uncomfortable tension. And that tension eventually becomes so unbearable that the organism, the person, is forced to take action to reduce or eliminate it.
So it basically functions like a pressure cooker.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, the unmet need is the heat source, right?
Yeah.
And the longer that need goes unaddressed, the higher the pressure spikes inside the system.
Right.
And the action you take, whether that's, finding a new job, starting a company, or even just going for a run, that action is the release valve.
And that release valve is part of a continuous infinite loop. The paper cites March and Simon, who map these behavioral models out really clearly.
Right.
You experience an unmet need, which generates tension. That tension compels you to act. If your action is successful, the goal is met and the tension dissipates. But this is the key part. The human operating system is not designed for permanent satisfaction.
Obviously not, or we'd just sit on the couch forever.
Exactly. The moment that tension clears, a brand new unmet need arises. And the cycle just begins all over again.
And what if the action isn't successful? What if you don't meet the goal?
Well, the individual doesn't just give up. They modify their behavior. They oscillate between positive and negative actions, constantly recalibrating until they find some way to relieve that strain.
Okay, so the paper makes a point to separate the terminology here, which I think is really important. It distinguishes between a need, a motive, and an incentive.
Yeah. Those are critical distinctions.
Because in casual conversation, we just throw those words into a blender, right? But psychologically, they represent very different phases of this pressure cooker cycle.
They are entirely distinct mechanisms, and understanding how they interact is crucial to really getting why someone takes that entrepreneurial leap.
So break that down for us.
Okay, so a need is the baseline internal lack. It's the origin of the tension. A motive is the active desire, but it's shaped by your specific identity and your environment. And then the incentive is the external stimulus in your environment that actually triggers the behavior.
The paper uses a cultural food analogy for this, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a brilliant way to illustrate how these gears turn together. So the physiological lack of calories, that is the need. It creates the raw tension of hunger.
Just the basic biological I need food feeling.
Right. But how you choose to resolve that tension depends on your culture and your upbringing. Your environment shapes the motive. So you don't just want raw calories, you specifically desire wheat, or maybe you desire rice.
Okay. The motive is the specific flavor of the need.
Exactly. And finally, the incentive is the external trigger. So in the text example, it's a spice promising to prepare that specific dish perfectly. That incentive is what finally transforms the internal tension into the physical act of, walking to the table.
Okay, so taking that framework out of the dining room and applying it to professional life presents this really fascinating dilemma.
Oh, so?
Well, if human behavior is just this endless loop of trying to relieve tension, do entrepreneurs possess, like, some biological or psychological mutation that gives them a much higher capacity for this mental strain, like a bigger pressure cooker?
That's a great question.
Or are they just simply rejecting the standard corporate methods of relieving it? Like, they just don't like the release valves everyone else uses.
The research leans heavily toward the latter. It's not that they have a higher tolerance for pain. It's that the traditional incentives, the ones that successfully relieve tension for the vast majority of the workforce, they just simply stop functioning for the entrepreneurial mind.
Huh. So the corporate world's incentives just break down for them.
Exactly. Because the standard corporate environment operates almost exclusively on extrinsic motivators. The text uses that classic analogy of moving a beast of burden a donkey.
The old carrot and the stick.
Right. You apply a carrot as a reward or a stick as a threat. And we see this manifested daily in the modern workplace.
Oh, absolutely. The carrot is the year-end bonus, the title bump, the corner office.
Yeah.
And the stick is, a negative performance review, a PIP, or just the underlying threat of getting laid off.
And to be fair, the carrot and the stick do work, mechanically speaking. Like if you dangle a 20% bonus in front of someone, their productivity will probably spike.
The spreadsheets definitely get formatted faster.
They do. But their impact is shallow and it's inherently temporary. The structural flaw with extrinsic motivators is that they require constant escalating reinforcement.
What do you mean by escalating?
Well, to maintain that exact same level of output from the employee, the carrot has to grow larger every single year, and the stick has to appear sharper.
Oh, because the individual adapts to the reward.
Exactly. It becomes this exhausting, completely unsustainable arms race of incentives. That is why the text emphasizes that extrinsic motivators, like monetary rewards, baseline social acceptance, or just the illusion of controlling your future, they can compel someone to the starting line.
They might convince you to type up your resignation letter.
Sure, but they are entirely insufficient to sustain a person through the actual reality of building a business. That requires intrinsic motivation, the drive for profound personal growth, the need to conquer a really complex challenge, and the pursuit of genuine self-fulfillment.
Okay, but wait. Let's look at the culture of startups right now.
Yeah.
It is incredibly easy for us to sit here and romanticize intrinsic motivation, right? To say it's all about the purity of the challenge.
Sure.
But Dr. Pandy's text explicitly includes monetary incentives in its framework. And when you look at founders, sleeping under their desks, working 100-hour weeks, the golden carrot of massive life-changing wealth is undeniably the elephant in the room.
It is definitely a factor, yes.
Because money is the ultimate universal tension reliever in our society.
Sure.
So how can the data suggest it isn't the primary engine keeping these businesses alive?
I mean, it's a completely illogical assumption to make, but it fundamentally misunderstands the psychological mechanics of wealth. The data clearly shows that money operates with severe limitations when it comes to human drive.
Severe limitations.
Really? Yes. Money is exceptionally good at fulfilling physiological and basic social demands. It secures housing, it buys food, it establishes a baseline of societal status.
Right.
But it categorically fails to fulfill higher-order psychological wants. The text highlights this core principle of human motivation. People are fervently, relentlessly motivated by what they do not have.
The absence is what creates the tension.
Precisely. The absence of a resource is the tension.
So once the resource is acquired, and it's secured, the tension just evaporates.
Yes, and the paper provides this brilliant mechanical analogy for this. It compares it to air.
Air, like oxygen.
Yeah. Air is the most critical resource for human survival. Without it, you die in minutes. But because you and I are currently sitting in a room with an abundant supply of oxygen, our need for air is completely met.
Right, I'm not actively thinking about trying to get more air.
Exactly. If someone walked in right now and offered us extra oxygen as a reward for analyzing this text faster, it wouldn't alter our behavior in the slightest. We already have enough.
Wow. Okay, I see where this is going.
Money functions identically in the entrepreneurial psyche. Once a venture stabilizes enough to meet basic survival and security needs, the promise of simply acquiring more money rapidly loses its kinetic energy.
So it can't fuel the really hard stuff.
Right. It can no longer generate the sheer willpower required to navigate the existential crises of running a company.
That makes the early days of a startup incredibly precarious then. Because if the founder is only running on the fuel of wanting to get rich, the moment they hit baseline profitability, the moment they have enough air, their primary engine just cuts out.
Exactly. And that's when a lot of them stall out.
So to survive long term, their operating system has to fundamentally change. And I think this leads us to how entrepreneurs actively disrupt one of the most famous psychological models in history.
Yes, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Right. We have to look at Maslow's pyramid, not as a rule book, but as something founders intentionally break.
Anyone familiar with basic psychology knows A.H. Maslow's pyramid. Traditional theory dictates that human needs are satisfied in a strict dominant sequence from the bottom up.
Let's do a quick refresher for everyone listening.
Sure. You start with level 1, which is physiological needs: food, water, shelter. You cannot care about higher concept if you are literally starving.
Makes sense.
Once fed, you move to level 2, which is safety and security. This is the realm of job stability, retirement accounts, predictable income.
The corporate comfort zone.
Yep. Then level 3 brings social needs, belonging, and connection. Level 4 introduces status and esteem. That's the desire for competence, independence, and recognition.
Okay.
And finally, the apex, level 5, is self-fulfillment or self-actualization. That's the drive to realize your absolute creative potential.
And the ironclad rule of Maslow's model is that you cannot skip steps, right? Like you don't obsess over realizing your creative potential level 5 if you are terrified about losing your job in your home, which is level 2.
Right, because the lower level deficit demands all your cognitive bandwidth.
But Dr. Penny's research shows founders doing the exact opposite of this. They are willingly, sometimes eagerly, detonating their level 2 security.
It's fascinating.
They abandon the steady paycheck, the corporate health care, the predictable career track, and they risk it all to jump straight to levels 4 and 5. They're chasing independence, ego validation, and creative self-fulfillment.
It is a complete inversion of traditional survival psychology. They are overriding what should be a biologically hardwired preference for safety.
Right.
And the paper backs this up with empirical evidence. It cites a study by Boris Blay involving managers and professionals in the United States.
What did he find?
Blay's research demonstrated a clear schism. The manual laborers in the study strictly adhered to the traditional hierarchy. They prioritized job stability above all else. But the higher-level professionals actively prioritized self-realization over stability.
Now, a skeptic might argue that, well, U.S. managers already have a financial safety net, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which allows them the luxury of prioritizing self-realization. Like, it's really easy to flip the pyramid when you have a trust fund or a massive savings account.
Oh, absolutely. And the research anticipates that exact critique.
Oh, it does.
Yes. It immediately introduces a counter-study involving 200 Indian industrial workers.
Okay, so a very different demographic.
Very different. These individuals were not affluent Silicon Valley executives. They were working-class laborers. Yet the poll revealed that even within this demographic, respondents frequently prioritize personal benefits and self-actualization over lower priority objectives like basic pay and job stability.
Wow. So the psychological hardware required to flip the pyramid isn't tied to a specific tax bracket. It's a much deeper wiring.
It crosses socioeconomic lines, and importantly, it crosses cultural boundaries too. The text explores the need assessment hierarchy model, which completely dismantles the idea that Maslow's sequence is some universal human law.
Really? I always thought it was considered pretty universal.
Not at all. Surveys conducted across Japan, continental Europe, Spain, and Belgium revealed massive deviations from the standard pyramid.
Like what?
Well, in Spain and Belgium, for example, employees consistently reported that their esteem needs, their desire for professional competence and recognition, were being met far better than their basic security and social demands.
Huh.
So the rigid idea that humans can only process one need at a time in a strict order is empirically false. Egoistic and self-fulfillment needs can manifest with incredible force, even when safety is entirely unsecured.
It suggests that for a certain type of person, the psychological pain of leaving their potential untapped is actually sharper and maybe more terrifying than the financial pain of missing a paycheck.
Yes.
The tension of not creating overrides millions of years of evolutionary bias toward playing it safe.
The text states this explicitly. There are individuals for whom the desire to be creative or the need to assert their independence dwarfs their basic needs. The conventional hierarchy simply does not map onto their internal landscape.
Okay, so we know they're willing to risk safety for fulfillment, but there's a massive difference between having a latent psychological trait and actually signing the incorporation papers.
Sure.
What is the breaking point? Like, what is the specific catalyst that forces someone out of a stable career and into the chaos of building a business from scratch?
To pinpoint that exact catalyst, the paper examines a highly targeted study of 334 business owners in Anakapali and Gudivada. Those are two coastal towns in Andhra Pradesh.
Okay, why those towns specifically?
Well, this is vital data because it doesn't look at theoretical tech unicorns in California. It looks at grounded regional enterprises operating in areas that bridge traditional agriculture and modern trade.
Real businesses.
Exactly. And the researchers went in with a very specific question. What was the primary compulsion? What actually forced your hand to start this business?
And this is where the data completely dismantles the whole wealth myth we talked about earlier.
Entirely. Out of those 334 business owners, the desire to acquire wealth and elevate social status barely registered as primary drivers.
That is wild.
They were statistically minimal.
So what was the number one reason?
The overwhelming primary driver was the need to employ their technical and professional talents. They possessed skills that were just going unused.
Wow.
And the secondary driver, which the text specifically labels a compulsion, was a deep, pervasive dissatisfaction with their current career or occupation.
Think about the mechanics of that dissatisfaction. It's not just, being annoyed by a micromanaging boss or hating the morning commute. It's a form of intense cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Because objectively that you are capable of operating at a level 9 or 10. But your current corporate environment actively restricts you to operating at a level 3.
Right.
It's basically psychological muscle atrophy. The tension isn't about wanting a larger salary. It is the sheer discomfort of feeling your professional faculties slowly degrading because you aren't allowed to use them.
Muscle atrophy is the perfect way to understand the text's findings here. These founders recognized that their innate abilities were vastly superior to the requirements of their employment. Their internal aspirations had completely outgrown the artificial ceiling constructed by their employers.
They outgrew the pot they were planted in.
Exactly. They didn't just want to be in charge. They deduced that the only way to arrest that atrophy and capitalize on their skills was to build their own environment. The corporate structure wasn't just boring. It was actively suppressing their potential.
But recognizing that you're atrophying is one thing. Believing you can actually build a profitable company to solve it is another thing entirely.
True.
Dissatisfaction provides a massive push, but it doesn't provide a parachute. If wealth isn't the motivator, and they are risking their basic safety, where do they find the empirical confidence to actually take the leap without feeling like they are just jumping off a cliff?
Well, the study provides a very clear answer to that, investigating what it calls facilitating factors, because the data shows this is rarely a blind leap of faith.
Okay, so what enables it?
The single highest-rated enabler among these 334 business owners was prior association or direct employment in the same or a highly related line of work.
Oh, interesting. So they basically served an apprenticeship in the exact industry they eventually disrupted.
Exactly. Earning a living as a worker in the field acts as a critical springboard. And it does two very specific things.
Okay.
First, it exposes the individual to the inefficiencies and flaws of the current market. They see exactly where the ceiling is broken.
They see the gaps.
Right. And second, and more importantly, it provides undeniable, tangible proof of their own competence. You aren't guessing if you have the technical skills to go solo. You have been executing those skills for someone else for years.
So it's not arrogant delusion, it's proven data.
Exactly. That prior experience mitigates the psychological risk. It transforms a terrifying leap into a highly calculated graduation.
Okay, so they have the push of dissatisfaction, they have the pull of wanting to use their skills, and they have the confidence of prior experience. But, the way we talk about this going solo, taking the leap, it leans really heavily into the mythology of the lone wolf founder.
Oh, the cultural obsession with the solitary genius.
Right, the guy in a garage fighting off the corporate world to build an empire entirely through sheer isolated willpower.
And Dr. Pandy's research takes deliberate aim at that mythology. It tears it down with data. The reality of entrepreneurship is profoundly interdependent.
Interdependent.
Yes. A study cited in the text by Murthy et al. Reveals that an individual almost never transitions into entrepreneurship relying solely on internal ambition. The necessary catalyst is actually a robust external support system.
So who is providing that support? If it isn't, venture capitalists or angel investors in those super early days, who was actually enabling this leap?
It is the immediate family.
Really? The family?
The research states unequivocally that the entrepreneur's spouse, family, and relatives are the primary motivators. They are the ones who actually cultivate and sustain the entrepreneurial spirit.
Wow.
The text uses this beautiful phrase. It describes the family as the individual's philosopher and guide. They provide the strategic sounding board and the emotional resilience required to navigate that early chaos.
Philosopher and guide. I love that. It elevates the role far beyond just, offering a sympathetic ear after a long day at the office.
Right. It's an active partnership.
It implies that the family is actively participating in the intellectual and strategic architecture of the venture. But, emotional support doesn't pay for inventory. How does this interdependency manifest financially?
Well, this is where the risk becomes shared. The research points out that a significant portion of early-stage capital does not originate from formal banking institutions.
Let me guess. Friends and family.
Exactly. It comes directly from the family home and the financial backing of close friends. This risk financing, as the text calls it, serves a dual purpose. On a practical level, obviously, it provides the runway to launch.
Sure.
But on a psychological level, it is transformative. When a family risks its own capital on an individual's venture, it dramatically allays the founder's fear of failure.
Because someone else believes in them.
Right. It is the ultimate tangible validation. It proves that the people who know the founder best have unwavering faith in their technical skills and their vision.
That completely reframes the entire concept of risk.
Yeah.
You aren't just betting on yourself. You are carrying the trust and the capital of your inner circle. Now, Dr. Pandy's paper is focusing heavily on the Indian context here. How does that specific cultural background change the definition of what a business actually is?
It creates a profound paradigm shift. The text argues forcefully that within Indian culture, entrepreneurship cannot be analyzed as a strictly individualistic phenomenon.
So it's not a solo pursuit of glory.
Not at all. Rather, it is viewed as a direct continuation of the family's collective objectives and goals. The business becomes an extension of the family's identity.
Oh, wow.
So the founder is merely the central mechanism through which a broader familial ambition is realized.
That is a fascinating contrast to the Western narrative, isn't it?
Yeah.
The whole idea of the individual breaking away from their family to forge their own destiny. Viewing the business as a collective familial objective raises the emotional stakes incredibly high, obviously, but simultaneously weaves a much tighter safety net beneath the founder.
It's a very powerful dynamic.
But, an entrepreneur doesn't operate in a vacuum. You can have the total backing of your family, your philosopher and guide. But if the broader society views what you are doing with suspicion or contempt, that is a massive psychological headwind.
And the broader societal context is the final critical piece of the motivational puzzle here. To explain this dynamic, the text brings in McClelland's acquired needs theory.
Okay, what is that?
So, McClelland established that a high internal need for achievement is a prerequisite for entrepreneurial behavior. Highly motivated people are driven to accomplish difficult things.
Right, that tracks.
But McClelland adds this massive qualifier. This internal drive will only manifest as entrepreneurship if the society in which the person lives grants high social standing to business owners.
Oh, so if a culture looks down on commerce, all those highly driven, brilliant individuals will just route their energy elsewhere.
Exactly.
They'll become academics or doctors or bureaucrats because that is where the society allocates status.
Precisely. The cultural perception of a profession acts as this invisible hand directing the flow of a nation's top talent.
That's incredible.
And the text cites further findings by Murthy that analyze how specific business roles were perceived by the entrepreneurs themselves. In that demographic, trading was granted the highest social honor, while farming was relegated to the bottom.
So talent and capital just flow toward the status.
Yep. And the text provides a stark, cautionary example of what happens when society actively disrupts this flow.
Okay, where do they see this play out?
Well, Eugene Staley conducted a pilot study in the Osmanabad region of Maharashtra. Staley observed this really troubling phenomenon. Political leaders in the area were publicly and frequently denigrating successful business people.
So they were framing commerce as something negative.
Right. They were criticizing the business community constantly.
If the leaders of a community are constantly signaling that business is inherently unethical or predatory, what happens to the psychology of a young person in that region who has that mental itch to start something?
The spark is extinguished before it can even catch fire.
Wow.
The study found that this negative political rhetoric created widespread public animosity toward business executives. Young people internalized the message that entrepreneurship was antisocial.
That's devastating.
It is. The text warns that when a society creates a negative perception of commerce, it actively hinders the healthy growth of entrepreneurship on a macroeconomic scale. The talent pool dries up because the social cost of starting a business just becomes too high.
That puts an immense responsibility on the culture to tell better stories, doesn't it? If all you hear are narratives about corrupt CEOs or failed, disastrous startups, the tension of staying in your unfulfilling job suddenly seems much more manageable than the social stigma of failing at a business.
Exactly. And the text actually advocates for addressing this.
It does.
It argues that we need to fundamentally change how we educate people about business. The paper explicitly recommends integrating entrepreneurial success stories directly into educational curriculums.
It's putting them right in the textbooks.
Yeah, placing them on the exact same level of importance as political figures or social reformers.
Because representation dictates ambition. When you see someone from your own background, from your own town, navigating the risks and building something that society actually celebrates, it normalizes the behavior.
It makes it real.
It transforms entrepreneurship from a terrifying, socially risky anomaly into a viable, respected path. I mean, if you were listening to this right now, feeling that intense dissatisfaction in your career, maybe the barrier isn't a lack of capital or a flawed business plan.
Maybe you simply lack the right narratives.
Right. You need to seek out those stories, and you need to build a microculture around yourself, a spouse, a mentor, a friend who can act as your philosopher and guide.
And that is really the ultimate synthesis of Dr. Pandy's research. The act of starting a business is initiated by profound internal tension, yes, but it is ultimately realized through external support and societal permission, is a deeply interconnected ecosystem.
So let's pull all these threads together for a final view of the psychological landscape we've traversed today. We began by redefining motivation itself, using McFarland's theory to understand that action is born from the uncomfortable physical strain of unmet needs.
The pressure cooker.
Right. We dismantled the corporate reliance on extrinsic motivators, that endless, exhausting cycle of the carrot and the stick, and recognized why the intrinsic fire of personal growth is the only sustainable fuel.
We explored how founders actively rebel against Maslow's traditional hierarchy. They deliberately strip away their own safety and security to escape the painful muscle atrophy of underutilization.
Skipping right over level 2.
Exactly. They risk their baseline survival to aggressively pursue self-fulfillment and the realization of their technical talents.
We analyzed the data from hundreds of business owners, proving that the myth of the wealth-obsessed founder is largely fiction. It's replaced by the reality of individuals desperate to use their skills to their full capacity.
And finally, we shattered the illusion of the lone wolf.
Right, proving that the family's role as a philosopher and guide, combined with the broader society's willingness to grant status to the entrepreneur, are the true enablers of innovation.
It leaves us with a portrait of the entrepreneur that is incredibly complex, highly vulnerable, and deeply human.
So, to you, listening to this right now,
Yeah.
we want you to run a diagnostic on your own operating system. Look at your daily routine. Are you feeling that internal strain, that pressure cooker building up?
And if you are, interrogate it.
Exactly. Is it just a desire for a bigger carrot? Or is it the cognitive dissonance of knowing your talents are vastly greater than the box your current role forces you into? What does your actual hierarchy of needs look like right this second? Are you clinging to level 2 security? Or is the tension of unfulfilled potential starting to override your need for safety?
As you process that audit, consider one final implication of Dalton E. McFarland's theory. If human drive is exclusively generated by the desire to eliminate the tension of an unmet need, then we arrive at a very uncomfortable paradox.
Which is?
A perfectly comfortable, entirely satisfied life is the absolute greatest threat to personal innovation. If you have no tension, you have no movement. Perhaps the objective of a fulfilling life isn't to ruthlessly eliminate all the strain and pressure. Perhaps the actual task is to carefully curate your tension, to figure out which unmet needs are actually worth enduring, because those specific tensions are the engines that will build your future.
Because maybe the uncomfortable realization you have staring at a spreadsheet on a Tuesday afternoon isn't a crisis to be managed. Maybe it's just your engine finally starting.